welcome back to Judging Bouncing Balls. Toby and Harold, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Excellent.
Right before we leave, well, the eve of our Orlando trip, so we'll talk about that next week. But we are headed, Doctor, to Orlando for soccer this weekend. We have a first round of the national tournament for our daughters, so
Oh,
full
that's
of excitement
exciting.
in the house.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So a little farther travel than usual, but we actually are, doing the airplane thing. So that's something new for our team.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Be a
that'll
little
be fun.
different.
Yeah,
What
excellent.
age group? What age group is
they're
it?
U16, so they're 15 and 16-year-olds.
Yeah. Oh, excellent.
So sophomores and so that'll be fun. But just a little introduction to you, Dr. Harold Schock, orthopedic surgeon here in Green Bay. And I've talked to you numerous times through the years. Our daughters have played a little tennis together, but your insight into youth sports in that. Now you have a daughter that's a freshman playing tennis. You have a younger daughter, correct?
True. I have three daughters and a son.
Okay.
All
Nice.
and all have chosen different kind of sports to pursue, which makes it great for the parental driving and everything.
We'll dive into your son's process and future in hockey and Carly's, just because I know more about her process in tennis. But let's start with you. Now you played sports in your career through the University of Michigan hockey, as I like to call it. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in southern Michigan. My dad was actually a professor at Michigan State University. And I ended up going to, as you alluded to, went to Michigan, played junior hockey around Michigan in the Midwest a little bit, and then ended up being very fortunate to go to the University of Michigan. I was kind of a lower end recruit, and I was able to work my way up on a good team, and I got to play with a lot of good guys and had some great experiences. And I'm still some of my best friends. We text each other every day and still make fun of the same guys for the same thing. So I had a great run in sports.
That sounds awesome.
Now, who did anybody you play with go to the NHL?
Yeah, I wasn't that great of a player, but the guys around me were pretty good. I probably played with, over the course of the 4 years at Michigan, I probably had a dozen or more NHL guys. Some of the bigger names would be like Marty Turco, John Madden, Mike Legg was the kid that scored the kind of famous Michigan goal. He was one of my classmates. Brendan Morrison, Mike Knuble, Billy McCult. So a number of guys that were able to play in the NHL. Good names.
I see. You play yourself down, but you were the captain of the national championship team, weren't you?
No, I'd love to take credit for that, but no, I wasn't the captain of the national. Brendan Morrison was our captain.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I tell everybody you were, so maybe it's spreading. I don't know.
Hey, what town did you grow up in, first of all?
I grew up in a town called Okemos near Lansing, really as much as anywhere. Spent most of my time kind of in the Lansing, greater Lansing area growing up.
Gotcha. How does your dad feel about you going to Michigan?
Yeah.
Say that again?
Your dad, how do you feel about you going to Michigan if he was a Michigan State professor?
Yeah, it was interesting. Actually, Michigan State had a really good hockey program at that time, and their coach didn't want me. So he said go where there's opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
Good for him. Fair
enough.
Good for him. Now you went to University of Michigan. Did you go to Michigan for med school?
I did.
You came out of there, and then I know you were out in Colorado for quite some time in the Denver area.
I did. Yeah, I did. It's called Sports Medicine Fellowship. So worked with a lot of athletes out there and kind of a very sort of boutique sports medicine practice. We took care of the Colorado Rockies and the Denver Broncos. I don't know if you remember the year that the Colorado Rockies, one of the most fun things I've been at, even a peripheral part of in sports, was when the Colorado Rockies made the World Series in 2007. And they lost to the Red Sox. I don't know if you guys remember that. Mm-hmm. But they basically had to go on a run at the end of the year. They had to win 21 out of 22 games just to get into a playoff game. They ended up winning the playoff game in extra innings, and they ended up
Wow.
sweeping. Then they swept the first 3 series of the playoffs, and then it ended up they lost pretty quickly to Boston. But it was just a team that basically was out of the playoffs. Organization hadn't planned for it, and then they literally went on a run where they lost like one game in the last month they played.
Wow.
That's crazy. Now, were you with the team during that run? I mean, were you part of the dugout team?
Yeah, we covered the game, went to the dugout, and it was really kind of interesting. You look at, I've worked with professional athletes in several different sports, with football and baseball and hockey, and the mentality of different sports is really pretty amazing. I mean, with baseball, they play so many games in a year that I couldn't believe it. I'd go sit down in the kind of cafeteria area. I'd get a workout in off them before the game. I'll sit down and have something to eat. I'd be talking to the guys eating, sitting around me having a hot dog or, some salad or something. And next thing you know, the game starts and those guys run out and play second base. Just kind of hanging out, right? But really the start in baseball, the starting pitcher was the only guy that was really kind of jacked up right before games. So it was kind of it's an interesting environment because they play 162 games in a year, so you can't get amped up the way NFL players do for their 17 games.
Sure.
Now, what was your role with the Broncos? Same thing.
Same kind of deal. Sideline coverage and training camp. There was with the NFL. There's a more of a group that covered that team, and that was similar type stuff. The Broncos had more of a down year that year, but it was still a lot of fun.
That's excellent. And then
cool.
how did you end up in the great city of Green Bay?
Green Bay had a lot of similarities to Michigan, and kind of in that upper Midwest type community, great place to raise kids, and it was just a really good fit all around for me, and a nice job opportunity, and we moved here and loved it ever since.
Awesome.
Excellent. And we're very happy that your daughter chose Bayport. Your son chose Notre Dame. I get it. But your daughter did chose Bayport, so that was a fantastic choice.
Yeah, no, she's had a great experience there, and been very fortunate to be part of that, and everybody in that Bayport community has been great with her, and it's been a lot of fun for her.
Hey, wait a second. Is your son the goalie for Notre Dame?
No, he's a defenseman. He played for Notre Dame last year, but not this year.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, very cool.
Now he graduated from Notre Dame last year, and we talked at the tennis banquet. He is in juniors right now.
So yeah, he didn't graduate. Maybe he'd like to think he graduated based on the curriculum that he's moved on to, but which I remind him of frequently. But he was a sophomore at Notre Dame last year, and then went through a process to be selected for what's called the U.S. National Development Team, which has been just a super cool experience. It's really been an unbelievable experience for him, and they play his team. They're based out of Plymouth, Michigan, which is a Detroit suburb. They play a mix of so they play in the USHL. They'll be up in Green Bay at the end of the month this year, and then at the end of December here. But then they also play a couple teams in other junior leagues. But then they go on 3 international trips and play, allegedly the best kids from Czechoslovakia and Sweden and Finland.
Wow.
and Canada. They're actually going to Germany for a week here at the end of the week.
Crazy. Good for him. That's exciting.
That's awesome.
So does he maintain his school then in Michigan for his education?
He does an online program in Michigan. They kind of have a situation where all the guys on the team essentially do the same process.
Okay. And then now his goal is to attend the University of Michigan. They've already been in touch with him, and that's the end goal if things continue to grow, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Every sport's a little bit different in terms of when colleges can make offers and whatnot. And so August 1st was the day. This summer he was sort of contacted by a number of colleges, and they kind of told him they liked what they saw, and then as of August 1st they could actually officially offer scholarships of your junior year. And so he August 1st he had a number of scholarship offers, and kind of went through the process and ended up landing in Michigan, and super excited for him, and hopefully that's a commitment that'll be hopefully honored 2 years from now. So he'll go through his last 2 years of high school online, and then go to University of Michigan.
That's awesome. He's seeing the juniors for 2 years. Then is that the?
Yeah, he'll be on that team has what's called a U17 team and a U18 team. So you're on the U17 team the first year, then the U18 team the second year.
Okay. Now, did you have any influence in the University of Michigan, or did you kind of set it out there?
No, it's actually interesting. I really, obviously, when he had his, when it looked like all his top schools were going to make offers to him, I certainly had my favorites, right? But I really tried to kind of stay back, and at the end of the day, like, it's his choice, and he's the one that has to believe in it. He's not going there for me. He's got to put the work into it. And I know that there's going to be hard times for him in that process, and not every day is going to be easy. And I certainly don't want him to feel at some point like, well, Dad made me come here type thing. So it was all him, and it's actually the coaching group there that was there when I was there lasted literally almost 20 years, just up until this last 2 years, and they sort of changed out coaching groups. So I really didn't know the guys that are there, and now they've had a nice. My son likes to sort of identify himself as an offensive defenseman, and they've had a nice run of developing offensive defensemen recently, and I think it's a really, really good fit for him.
That's great. Now, you mentioned one thing that they hope they honor the scholarship. So they offer you it, or they offered the scholarship to you at your junior year. And then you have 2 years, 3 years to grow and develop. But is there a time when they can be like, it's not working out?
Yeah, it's it's kind of an interesting nuance in the verbal commitment process, right? So both the player and the school has the option to decommit, right? And I would say the school, what happens in hockey is the school will say, hey, you know what, you're not ready this year. Then they'll push them out another year. Then they'll say, okay, you're not ready this year. And they sometimes schools will push guys out because he could actually play 4 years of juniors, being that he started this year. And then also players have if coaching changes, things like that, players can decommit as well, which in my opinion is a little bit of an odd process. It's statistically unlikely, but it does happen. You just got to, if he gets to a point where he's going to go there and they don't see him fitting their plans, I think I'd rather see him go somewhere else and have them be honest with him up front.
Yeah, there was some information that came out today. I follow a lot of Twitter, and it says for the massive NCAA Division I changes coming in 2024. All will be required to guarantee the scholarships they offer to student athletes, whether they play their sport or not. So if you sign up and you end up not playing hockey your sophomore year, according to this, they still have to maintain that. All will be required to provide up to 10 years of ongoing tuition assistance to scholarship athletes when they complete their degree. And then required to provide mental health services to student athletes, which just means...
Is that Power 5 schools, or is it do they suggest
this says for all NCAA Division I schools? So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, fantastic.
So and then student athletes from all 3 NCAA divisions will have access to a nationwide injury insurance program. So
yeah, I thought that was crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they're starting to take care of the athletes, because it is a job.
No, absolutely. I think that's a good step forward. Now, I think if I'm hearing that correctly, if somebody's an athlete their freshman year, and for whatever reason they're not an athlete their sophomore year, then they get taken care of. But I think it sounds like they probably still have to get there as a freshman athlete. Is that what how you're reading it?
It's pretty vague on that, but I would assume so. But here's my
Yeah.
question. Our daughters play soccer, and it's not, there's only so many scholarships that a Division One or two team is provided. Let's say it's
Mhm.
10. So a lot of times they'll do halves and quarter scholarships. The question is, if you have a half scholarship player and then she no longer plays and you have to maintain that scholarship, does that team not allowed to fulfill that other half scholarship for a player?
That's
That's
what
a
I
good
wondered.
question. Is it like a salary cap situation where you either spend the cap dollars or you don't? Yeah, that's
Correct.
interesting.
Because football gets a lot, especially at your Power
Yeah.
Five schools. I'm sure hockey and I know when I attended Northern Michigan back in '92, most of them were on full rides. I mean, they had kids from all over the world. But it'll be interesting to see how it works for your lower end Division One kids, and then how it affects your Division Two kids.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd hope that they're forced to honor the kids, but I don't know that it should necessarily count against the team.
yes, I agree, especially if you got a kid looking for a scholarship.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I do have a question. We talked, and it was a couple years ago, Dr. Schock, and you had an interesting take on youth sports and when kids should start youth sports. And you had kind of a different theory on football versus hockey versus even soccer.
Yeah,
And if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it was football you mentioned your body really not being developed till I think your junior year. I mean, ideally for the body itself.
yeah. Well, I think this, and this is uh, my opinion from sort of watching kids in different sports, treating athletes in different sports. Obviously, I'm a sports junkie. I love watching. I love watching all of it. Watching a number of kids in the area sort of progress and watching the process through college and being a part of the NFL Combine several times. I would tell you I'm pretty convinced that those kids that end up at the NFL Combine, there's probably between a half and a third of them that probably didn't have to play their sport until they were in a senior in high school or a freshman in college. And my basis for that is that the that percentage there's such a high percentage of them that are just such freak athletes that no matter what they had done previously, as long as they're active, like if you have a 6'6" guy that has a 4.40 that can jump and catch a ball, whether he played basketball, whether he played uh, football, whether he played soccer, whether he played hockey, uh, when he was 11, 12, 14, and 15 years old, I don't think it probably makes a lot of difference. I think if you're that athlete at the end game, you're probably there. Now, obviously, there's with regards to like quarterbacks, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of learning that occurs maybe in that position. Um, I think that the other thing we see is we see kids who are 12 years old who are uh, put in as linemen and they start learning the lineman position. Well, they might top out at 5'9", and it's pretty hard to see that kid being a collegiate lineman, right?
Yeah.
And I think I think football specifically sort of lends itself to the kids who are early matures, maybe getting put in positions that might not necessarily be their true adult position. Now, other sport like ice hockey, I mean, you have to learn how to skate, and you have to learn how to skate at a young age.
Yeah.
That's the one piece in hockey. But I think that you have to. Um, I think that sport diversification is super important, even for hockey players. You look at the different skills you learn, even mental skills with a game like golf. I think it's very important. Um, I think so. I would say every sport's a little bit different. James Flanagan's one of my favorite athletes in the area. He also happens to be a good friend of my son's. But that kid, he's playing hockey for Notre Dame. He's committed to Notre Dame University to play football, and I saw a video of him dunking a basketball the other day. So I mean, I think that the ability to sort of play different sports, learn different balance points, I think it's super important. And I think that as we specialize our young athletes, and Toby, your daughter, and I are probably maybe in the worst sport of that with regards to tennis. As we specialize our young athletes, we lose some of those pieces.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we do the podcast. We first started talking, we have our daughter, like my youngest and Jerry's oldest daughter, play soccer together, and it's turned in. I mean, it is now December 7th or 6th. We are still playing soccer that we started on January 2nd. So we played high school in there, but they're like, if you want to play it, like my daughter tried playing volleyball, and the coach said, "Listen, if you can't make practice, don't bother." So
they have the team pick for next year already too.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so you try to, that you hear college coaches like, well, we like multi-sport athletes. Well, we always question that, because when there's no time. If you want to try to maybe make a run at a scholarship, you really need to, to work on your skill to hone your craft. So it's hard to throw in another sport that takes so much time, because most sports are practicing 4 or 5 nights a week these days.
It certainly is. And I think there is an age, right? Is it 15, 16, 17, depending on the sport, where if you really want to go after that scholarship, you probably have to hone in on that sport, right? I think the other thing that sometimes is lost on people is, in terms of developing an individual athlete, you don't necessarily need to play a team sport. Like, you don't necessarily have to, travel to Orlando to play soccer if your kid is trying to be sport diversified, right? They can mountain bike, they can, play YMCA basketball. They can do all kinds of things that are maybe a little bit less sort of glamorous in the youth sport realm, but develop those other athletic skills. And also, I think it's really good for kids that are potentially high level in one sport to feel what it's like to sit on the bench in another sport.
Yes.
Great point. That's a great point. What do you now, reading your bio, you do a lot with ACLs and different, sports related injuries. We have had a rash, and this fall it hasn't, but last spring in our soccer club, we had a rash of young girls, probably 13 to 17, with ACL tears and meniscus tears. Is it more prevalent on the female side than on the male side, or is it bad luck?
Yeah, so that's actually been an area that's fairly well studied. It is more prevalent on the female sports side. There's a number of different factors that contribute to that. We like to sort of break down those factors into what we consider modifiable and non-modifiable factors. So basically, the sort of obvious question out of that is, if it is more prevalent, what are the things we can do to prevent it, right? So we look at, if we talk about the non-modifiable factors, there are things such as the shape of the end of the femur bone in females different from males. We talk about the width of what's called the notch where the ACL sits. There's something called the valgus angle, or the angle from the hip to the knee to the ankle, is different in females than males. So there's certain things that are what we consider non-modifiable. So no matter, even if you have your kid on a perfect training program, there is going to be a higher risk for females to have ACL injuries than males who are participating in sports. Now, when we look at modifiable factors, we're looking at neuromuscular balance, control, fatigue type injuries, and specifically the other breakdown we should talk about is contact versus non-contact. We're talking more about the non-contact. If somebody's running down the sideline and it gets hit one way, gets stabilized one way, and a linebacker hits them the other direction, there's not much we're going to be able to do to modify that particular load for an ACL injury. The real focus though is on neuromuscular training and balance, and females tend to be more what we call quad dominant, so the quadriceps stronger than the hamstrings, which limits the ability to protect the ACL. We look at landing angles from jumps. Females tend to land in more of what's called a valgus pattern, and that's something that especially with the advent of technology and video analysis, we can look at those landing angles and improve them. And that's certainly an area, we see. I would tell you, I go to gyms and I'm watching sports sometimes, and I cringe a little bit sometimes watching some girls biomechanics, not just girls, but some guys as well, biomechanics. And the other thing is, you have to look at the thing that's really hard to quantify is when you look at a 12, look at the difference between a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old, right? There's some 16-year-olds that look like 12-year-olds. There's some 12-year-olds that look like 16-year-olds. And their body's going through this weird maturation process. And usually during some part of that, they're getting a lot of height velocity, and it's very difficult for their muscles and their neuromuscular control to keep up during those periods of peak height velocity. And I think that there has to be some, especially the overuse sports and overuse injuries, people have to be cognizant of it in that area. Now, all this being said, as our kids are more active in sports, we have more participation hours, there are going to be ACL injuries, but there certainly are things we can modify.
There's been all these businesses that are strictly for training. My daughter did one here in Howard. It was strength and conditioning, yet and speed. Do you see a benefit to those outside of the practice where they're really honing in on the strength, or is it, right now the high schools have fantastic weight rooms and they have people that are there, but is it more? Could they be more specialized in their weightlifting? Because I agree, my daughter's quads are probably a heck of a lot stronger than her hamstrings, and they've told her about working on different muscles in the legs and the butt to try to not have them pull so tight. Is there weight training out there? Is there documentation on what they should be doing differently, or?
Yeah, and the answer that's different for every individual kid, right? I think that, to your point, man, we like some of the facilities in this area are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, there are facilities here that dwarf some Division I colleges, right? We have some absolutely beautiful facilities, but I think that in the strength and conditioning world, there's a lot more conversation around some of these things with regards to ACL prevention specifically, and really building healthy training habits. Things are a lot different than, certainly when I grew up. I mean, they try to make all of us power lifters, and really it turns out that's not the right way to train hockey players. And there are a number of specialized folks that are certified athletic trainers that can help to, and also certified strength and conditioning coaches who can really drill down and help, especially the thing I think the area of potential for big improvement is there are a lot of young high school kids that see the senior lifting all this weight and they're like, oh, I'm going to do this no matter what, and they develop really poor technique. I think the focus really needs to be on technique, and then allow them to try to build into weight, and it's the sort of macho who squats the most type thing is really a old school way of thinking, and I think the important thing is that every individual builds a balanced, stronger body.
Growing up, we had bench, squat, and deadlift, and we tried to do those for as much weight as possible, and then that was your day.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Do it again tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, then you got yelled at if you didn't do it faster. Like, no, it's all right.
Yeah. 8 reps today, 6 tomorrow, 4 the next day, then 2 the final day, then do it again next week.
Yeah, yep. I think our coach brought in the Nebraska plan, which is, I couldn't even tell you, but at the end of the day, I just hurt. I don't even know what I was doing, but that's okay.
Sure. But I also let me say one more thing on that, like the functional training. So the functional movement, actually training in functional movements, the stretching. We know that stretching is super important for injury prevention. The mix of cardio and weightlifting. I mean, there's a lot more known now about how to train, and well-educated people can really look at individual athletes and help them out. So I guess I would say if you had a concern about the direction your kid was going, get them in with a professional, and not that you have to live there twice a week, but just have them assess, where are the imbalances, because all these kids have imbalances.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and that's what other injuries do you see that's very common and we have a lot of female like dads that we know pay attention to our show and we talk to a lot of them. But what's another common female injury that's not maybe on the male side?
It's a lot of the other sort of big category, I would say, are the what we consider sort of hyperlaxity injuries. So females tend to be a little bit more lax than males. And the three most common ones we see with that are shoulder instability, especially in like a volleyball player or swimmer. We have patella instability or kneecap instability, and then ankle instability as well would be sort of the three that come to mind, often related to hypermobility during those early to middle teenage, even in the late teenage years sometimes.
The big thing now is so our club plays on grass for soccer at practice. Our games are on turf. High school fields are turf. So when you go to high school, everything's turf. And I know the turf's gotten better, and we've argued this with others. But do you see in turf-related injuries versus grass, or what is your take on that whole aspect?
No, that's actually a really interesting question. It's even sound like the debate's coming back around, right? With even in the NFL. So I mean, clearly if anybody's ever been on AstroTurf, we all know that the surf. I mean, that's basically like a marine carpet sitting on top of concrete. I mean, that was awful.
The cheapest Fleet Farm
Awful.
carpet you can get.
Yeah, it's absolutely awful. And
Awful.
we've come a long way from there, right? And the field turf is actually pretty impressive material now. Obviously, the upside of it, if you're in a high school situation with a multi-use facility, I mean, there's not probably a better surface to keep consistent than a good field turf, right? Because I mean, natural grass, like a good natural grass field, is absolutely beautiful, but super hard to maintain, right? And actually,
Yep.
I spoke about this with the De Pere group before they put in their turf field. Man, it had to be. I'm going to age myself here. I'm getting old enough I can't remember, but it has to be at least 10 or 12 years ago. And the kind of debate at that time, the thing that I find super interesting is that there's a lot of science out there. The majority of the science is somehow or another funded by somebody associated with field turf, right? I mean, there's nobody from Scott's Lawn Care that's supporting evidence that natural grass is better. So, we have one side of industry really pushing field turf, and I mean, like a really good natural grass field, I think is equivalent, if not better than field turf from an injury standpoint. But there really aren't a lot of places that have the resources to have a beautiful natural grass field that is maintained and can be used by multiple teams, especially in our climate, right? So,
Right.
if you're comparing apples to oranges, if you're asking, a beautifully manicured grass field versus a field that's had, three different varsity teams practice on it for 6 hours a day for the last 3 months, and then all of a sudden that field's got divots all over it and slippery. It's so if you have a maintenance program that's fantastic, then I think a grass field is probably a little bit safer environment. If you have multi-use on it, or you don't have the resources to maintain it perfectly, obviously a field turf is a more consistent surface. Now, the shoe wear, I think there's probably some room for improvement, especially in high school, in the shoe wear department, where there has to be when a kid steps on a field and twists, there's got to be some level of give to that friction surface.
Yeah, I did a lot of research on cleats, and Nike has a new soccer cleat that's got a circle cleat, and it's supposed to be for that now. I told her she's going to wear this set of cleat for the rest of her life just to get the money out of it, of course. But
Exactly.
there are a lot of bad cleats out there. And the problem is with society, right? The $50 cleat at Dick's is probably the worst cleat that you could have, and it goes from there. But do you see I hear a lot of problems with with soccer and female soccer on turf is the hips, like the pain in the hips or the shin splints. I don't know if that's
Yeah, so
related.
no, the shin splint's more of kind of an overuse injury. When we look at shin splint problems, that's a we certainly look at the surface that they're running on. It's kind of the old adage: if you have a runner with shin splints that runs on concrete, then you try to push them to run on trails or on wood chips, just so it's a softer surface. Um,
Mhm.
the shin splints are certainly an overuse injury. The hip injuries are, we're learning more and more about hip injuries in younger people, and certainly there are a certain number of hip injuries that we really want to take care of. Again, a lot of stretching and biomechanically taking care of yourself will help you a lot with those hip injuries as well.
Side note, are we seeing a lot of pickleball injuries? Because I've been playing now for a little while, and my wear and tear is getting to me. I think I got a little torn meniscus. I'm fighting through it, but I hear that's a growing problem amongst the older as we get there.
Yeah, well,
Weekend warriors.
yeah, I mean, let's talk about the popularity of pickleball. I mean, it's taken off. It's unbelievable. It's funny. My wife and I were just talking about pickleball, but we don't think we're quite old enough to get there yet, though, Toby.
Oh.
Oh no!
But I mean, the popularity of pickleball is absolutely taken off. I mean, it's a great both social and sport. It's fantastic that people are playing it and being active. Certainly, we are seeing more injuries associated with it, but I don't know that we wouldn't be seeing those injuries if those participants weren't doing something else.
Right. Well, the key is if they're doing something else. But now we'll break. We'll get out of the injury. Now we got to talk about your freshman daughter. She's had quite a bit of success. The difference between tennis.
Hey, can I ask one question quick?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, before we leave ACLs, I had to ask you about this, Harold, and I saw a report about 2 weeks ago that from the British Journal of Medicine that they're actually saying they think that they can do ACL rehabilitation without surgery, and they've done I don't know, it was 400 studies on this where they brace the knee at a 90 degree position, and as I understand it as a layperson, they think that that position allows the ACL to regrow back together and actually not have surgery. I'm just curious what your take on that is. To me, that seems like that would not be advisable, but they thought maybe this was something new and upcoming. What's your take on it, or have you heard about that?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it really is an interesting concept. I have heard about it. I haven't sort of taken a deep dive into that particular study yet, but
Okay.
I would tell you one of the things that we see is, and you have to take with a little bit of grain of salt. I'd want to see where that study comes from. If it was in a British journal, if it's a European study, or specifically an English or British study, their health system is a nationalized health system, and a lot of the folks that use that system are not their outcome of their knee being okay may be that you have a 16-year-old that flexed their knee and braced it for 3 months, and now they can walk around and they're going to school and they have a job and it's fine, but they don't really care that they stopped playing soccer. So
Sure.
I would tell you that the outcome. I mean, as Americans, we are certainly sports crazed and specifically youth sports crazed. So I would say that a lot of the things that we look at, there have been some good Scandinavian studies that suggest that people are very happy without ACL reconstruction. I've actually seen some Scandinavian folks who really, they say, yeah, I can't, every time I plant and pivot, my knee gives out on me. I stopped playing tennis. I stopped playing the sports I wanted to play, but my life's okay. And the doctor told me I didn't need my ACL because I'm 25 years old now. And so it's a different, again, without kind of taking a deep dive in that study, hard to say for sure, but I would tell you that the Australians actually came out with a study that showed that you didn't need surgery for Achilles ruptures, but again, it was a similar thing. Like there, a lot of cultures are very satisfied with not being as sport crazed as we are.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I thought maybe you were going to say it had to do with the fact that it takes them 6 months to a year just to get in for surgeries.
Yeah, that too.
What is the time frame if you take a 16-year-old girl, she has ACL surgery, and I know there's different like ACL, MCL, and that. What is the time frame that you would recommend before they would act? Like I know they start their rehabilitation and they start running, but for a contact sport, what is the length of time for that?
Yeah. So I'd love to give you a hard and fast answer, but that is certainly a different question for different answer for every patient. And I would say like kind of the nature of my practice, unfortunately I'm seeing people who have failed ACL reconstructions, and often young people and fortunately, unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of times there are people that had a surgery elsewhere, and they kind of come in on the back end and say, well, gosh, what possibly went wrong? And I would tell you that, if someone goes to Wausau and has surgery or Chicago's had surgery, I would say that the most common reason that I see people that have had an ACL surgery fail, it's because they've gone back to sport too soon and they weren't neuromuscularly ready for it. And I would tell you that I've actually gone from really I put people through a series of tests. I want to make sure their knee is as close as possible to the other knee, and whether that's 6 months, whether it's 8 months, whether it's 10 months, until we put them through a series of very rigid biomechanical tests until that knee is within 10% of the other side. We recommend they don't return to contact sports. And so to full circle, I guess I would probably say, on average, I think the safe time is usually around, in most kids, 8 to 9 months when they achieve that. Now we also look at seasons, and there's no reason to rush a kid back to play the last 2 weeks of their season if they have 2 months off after that. It's a sliding scale where essentially a year out of surgery, their risk of re-injury is about the same as it's ever going to be indefinitely. And at 6 months is about as early as we ever send people back, but there's definitely a higher risk there than from 6 months to about a year is kind of a sliding scale of risk.
Now, you mentioned an Achilles rupture. Let's say an older 40-year-old, hurts it on the turf in the New York City area, and he is back within a couple of months. Is that feasible? Did he really rupture his Achilles, or is he just messing with 65% of the snaps so we don't get the first round draft pick? Just asking.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, is he actually been cleared to play yet? I haven't followed that situation.
Cleared to practice. He has a practice window that he can he's in. Yeah. So I don't
don't have any particular firsthand knowledge on that situation, but I would tell you that if I was putting money in Vegas on whether he was actually going to play more than 2 snaps this year, I know where my money would be.
Yeah, it has to be, right? I mean, that's such a crazy injury to just come back from. Now, I don't know. I know the NFL, and you've been a part of that. Is I mean, look at Adrian Peterson. How long did it take him to come back from an ACL tear? I mean, it was 7 months.
Yeah.
Wow,
that's somebody who's being paid to rehab every day.
Yeah.
And is a freak athlete to start with.
And as a freak athlete, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
2 things I am not: paid and a freak athlete. Now, what sport do you see the most injured? We'll talk girls side right now, but what sport do you see the most? It doesn't have to be ACL, but the most injuries from swimming, volleyball, tennis, field hockey, soccer.
Yeah, I mean, it's regional, right? Like I would say high school football here is probably the per participant hour highest rate of injuries. With each sport, we sort of see a traditional set of injuries. High school football, we see knee injuries, we see shoulder instability, we see clavicle fractures. Hockey, we see MCL injuries and clavicle fractures. Runners, we see shin splints, hip and knee kind of overuse pain. Soccer, we see ACL injuries and some hip injuries, hamstring injuries. Volleyball, we see shoulder injuries in the hitters, and occasional knee injuries. So I would say every sport has its own sort of subset of injuries. Runners have stress fractures.
Yeah.
So truthfully, injuries. I tell kids that are going into higher level sports, injuries are part of every collegiate player has had some kind of injury. It's a matter of how they've dealt with it, right? You have to deal with it appropriately and get good advice. And if you don't like the advice you're getting, feel free to get another opinion. But you have to pick a pathway, and you can't just ignore an injury, because that's when you get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of sports injuries, right? That's why these facilities are built at every hospital now. Yep. Bellin, you guys have a big indoor turf, and it's good business.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's exciting too, right? Because when I look at, I have 4 kids, and we joke about all the time and efforts we put into these sports, but I couldn't imagine anything I'd rather my kids be doing in their free time.
Right. Have your kids, has your son had any injuries that have kept him out of not just a game, but maybe a period of time?
Man, I'm looking for wood somewhere here.
Okay, no, back off. I get it.
No, so far we've been pretty fortunate.
No, we're in the same boat now. Jeremy's daughter broke an arm. Wait, what did she break, Jeremy, in the Madison game?
She's broke her wrist twice and a clavicle. Yeah. She lost her skate going into the boards. And then she broke her clavicle, and then she tripped over a goalie and got flipped up and landed on her wrist. And she had a compression fracture in her wrist. It wasn't like a break; it was a compression. Okay. I can't remember what they called it.
Did she? Well, in hockey?
No, that one was in soccer. The hockey one was a broken clavicle where she lost her skate.
But she ended up playing like 15 minutes of soccer with her hand held up against her chest, broken, which is pretty impressive.
Tell me, Dad was yelling at her the whole time.
Maybe. Move your arm.
Run.
Well, we got to get off the injury subject, but to talk about Carly, I had the opportunity. I've seen Carly grow up a few times with my daughter playing in the same circle of tennis, but she is one hell of a tennis player. She won the first Northeast Wisconsin female to win a singles championship as a freshman. Pretty good.
Wow.
And then I saw she just won.
Yeah. No.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go
I was going to say, I just saw she won the U16 indoor championship here a couple weeks ago.
She did. I would say in terms of people in tennis world accomplishments, I'd say that's been her biggest accomplishment so far in her career. Is that now in the USTA kind of has 3 major championships. Probably the biggest one's outdoor hard courts, and that's in August. Then they have a clay court championship, which is mostly won by kids in the South that play on the clay courts all the time. Then they have an indoor championship, and she just won the 16. So she's a first year 16. So she's a 15-year-old. She just won the first year 16 gold ball or national championship.
Wow.
Now, your wife played little tennis at a small university called Stanford, correct? So.
It is actually. I kind of remind her it is kind of a small university. There actually aren't that many students there.
So the lineage is there. I'll be honest, my kids don't have quite that lineage. There's probably a little something there for me, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think there's an imbalance in lineage here right now.
Now, but what is her like? Because tennis is a lot different than any other sport, just because it's mainly individual based. She was the high school team, yes, but. Mainly individual based. So you go as far as you want. You go to the tournaments you want, or is there a process of recruiting that'll happen as she gets older through high school?
No, that's an interesting question. It's different, right? Because you're not on a team. You sort of have to, if you're kind of going on that pathway toward a college scholarship, you choose what tournaments you go to. And the other thing that's kind of interesting I'm starting to learn is that there are one thing, if Carly keeps kind of progressing on a direction she's going. So I kind of asked my wife, I'm like, well, she just won nationals a year older. Like, what's next? What are the next steps here? They actually have like these almost like junior pro circuits and even some low level professional things, which you might start getting involved with in the summertime, which is kind of a little bit of different twist there. So there, and in terms of like the college stuff, it sounds like it will sort of, in some ways, kind of take care of itself. One thing about tennis is that it's so there are all these different ranking systems, and it can be very. I mean, they can, you put all these matches in a computer, and it'll actually, there's some computer that's been tracking Carly's progress, and she's been like 12 years old, and logs every one of her matches. And not just every match, but it logs like the game scores, and they rate like her against these other kids. It's almost like it's like a golfing it's like a handicap in golf, and you can really drill down. I mean, you get several thousand data points over the course of like 200 matches. It really drills down kind of where some of these things are pretty accurate. Like these two kids match up even if they haven't played each other. A lot of times it's pretty accurate how, I mean, it's not quite like watching the clock in swimming, but it's pretty accurate in terms of how kids stack up against each other. Now, one of the interesting things in higher level tennis is, it's not just a hard serve or a hard return. Some kids are able to figure out like what beats the other player, and it's kind of the chess match within the game is something that's been interesting for me to sort of learn about.
That's crazy because she's got to.
So I guess
she's got to have seen some really good tennis out there. I mean, high school, there's some great tennis players in the state of Wisconsin. I've got to see it. I got to see Carly play the Minical out of Manitowoc. Fantastic match.
Oh, that was great. Yeah,
like fun to watch it because a lot of times high school tennis can be a little slow. There are some schools that struggle, but when it's high level, and I can't imagine what she's running into, out there. I did look her up in her scores, and she's had a lot of success in where she's playing, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, she's been fortunate to be on a pretty good run. I mean, that Wisconsin high school was it was a really fun experience for her too, and also for mom and dad, getting down to Nielsen and playing in Madison, and in front of kind of a crowd and all that, and having her school. I mean, that was really neat, a great experience for her. I'm really glad she was able to do that, and also I was really proud of her how she sort of managed the pressure of that situation. It's different playing in Florida in front of like your parents, the other kids' parents, and like two other people kind of standing there, but with a lot of people, a lot of eyes on her. She really did well, and I she really all my kids, they not just the fact that they've seen a reasonable amount of success, but I mean she absolutely works her ass off at it. I mean she gets after it, so certainly proud of that.
Yeah, that night we had a team dinner and we ate the chicken wings. That was very impressive. I mean, she's what, 5'2", 5'3", 100 pounds. I mean, she is tiny, and she hits the ball a gazillion miles an hour. And she's a heck of a hockey player too, correct? She's a heck of a hockey player.
Yeah.
Does she still play hockey?
Yeah, she's good. She doesn't, unfortunately. Yeah.
Now, what about the other two? What sports are you chasing tonight that where they're at?
Swimming and girls lacrosse. So we're working. We're kind of working.
Wow.
I'm learning about that. But my younger two play tennis. They play.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm sure we'll see that coming through. Jeremy, do you have any other questions before we let the driver of the dad to get his kids home?
Let the chauffeur go. Hey, keep it up. I have 4 kids too, so I know what you're going through there. But no, I actually don't. Toby, you had a lot of the questions I had as well. So, really insightful stuff, Dr. Schock. It's great for you to come on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that after the
awesome. Thank you.
After our standing around the pizza buffet at the local restaurant for the tennis banquet, that we made it happen. So we really do appreciate it. Excellent. Well, we're gonna hang up here. Just give us 1 second before you hang up, and we'll download everything.